Welcome back to Chaos Corner. It's me. It's me. It's the GOC. Here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel, coming to you live to tape 25 feet below the surface of the earth for another episodic YouTube adventure, Story Time. Sit back and relax. I can't thank you enough for being here. Follow me on all social media platforms. Drop an elbow on that like button here on the YouTube channel. Go over to the community page. I update almost daily. Navigate the playlist. 4,000 videos, over 2,000 subscribers, coming up on 1 million total views. Nobody works harder for you than I do. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. Shout out to my moderators, the OTS Tribal Queen, and Austin Nance. Everyone stay mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually fit. We're coming up on some crazy days. I don't want to get into that now, but you guys know where I'm coming from if you're a subscriber on this channel. And if you're not subscribed, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. So sit back and relax. Grab a beverage, grab a snack, share this out, and let's have some fun here on Story Time. And remember this. If he's for us, no one else can be against us. An industry at war. The wrestling industry was facing a level of competition unlike anything before, and promoters were scrambling to ensure their business didn't descend into chaos. No pun intended. The competition wasn't only from Vince McMahon Jr., but from each other as well. Although promotional unions such as the National Wrestling Alliance maintained the peace amongst affiliated members, there was still enough anxiety to keep everyone on their toes. Now remember, fans, subscribers, members, we're reading this together for the very first time. So cut me some slack, man, when I rumble, stumble, mumble, and bumble. The threat of a deep-pocketed rival with national aspirations was hard to comprehend, and there was no established precedent in terms of a proper defense. Many years earlier, the NWA had powerful enough to curtail oppositional groups, and often simply intimidated foes by its size and strength. The alliance flaunted its authority at times, and with exhaustive political ties, vast cash resources, and a steady leader like Sam Mushnick, the organization stopped many adversaries in their tracks. By 1984, though the NWA was lacking nearly all of those attributes and was susceptible to any number of problems, including internal dissension. Now in 84, I don't know, what am I, 21 years old? I don't know where you were in 1984, but I know where I was. Promoters were coping with an increased number of challenges during an extraordinary period in history. First and foremost, they absolutely had to keep their top talent happy. With the open options to migrate to a non-NWA promoter for better pay and national publicity, wrestlers were viewing the road to the WWF a little differently than they had in years past. The NWA could no longer threaten a grappler with blacklisting as they had done in the 1950s. The loss of a headline wrestler like Hulk Hogan on basically no notice was crippling to Verne Gagne, who had his star booked weeks in advance with good pre-sales. Crushed fans expected to see Hogan live. Gagne didn't help matters by not quickly changing local advertisements when he knew Hogan was going to be a no-show. With good reason, people were less prone to support a promotion than pulled the bait-and-switch routine. In early 1984, Jim Crockett lost Roddy Piper and Greg Valentine to the WWF, and it was no secret that McMahon was actively hunting for more big names to add to his roster. When wrestlers did jump to the WWF, organizations had to replace their losses. Up and down the lines, the talent ranks tightened. Gagne called on semi-retired friend, 57-year-old The Crusher, to help fill the void left by Hogan. But in most situations, promoters pulled in workers from other groups. It was an accordion effect. One promotion after another was hurt by the talent grab, leaving vacancies all over the place. Smaller independents, such as International Championship Wrestling out of Lexington, Kentucky, were the last rung of the talent ladder, serving parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, and Illinois. ICW had been a direct opponent of NWA and AWA affiliated promoter Jerry Jarrett since 1978. There was a legitimate hostility between the two operations, and a rivalry between ICW's Randy Macho Man Savage and Jerry the King Lawler was a feud just waiting to be exploited. Remember the time frame as we're here on the time machine in story time with the GOC. Oh, that's me. In late 1983, facing heavy financial hardship, ICW owner Angelo Poffo made a deal with Jarrett, and Savage debuted on Memphis TV in early December. Of course, Savage wanted a piece of Lawler, and the invasion angle was huge, and it was a huge hit with the fans as well. An explosive, brash persona, Savage was taking a big step toward greater fame, and over the following months, he feuded with Lawler, capturing the Mid-America and international titles and garnered mainstream attention. Stand by. Don't go anywhere. Remember, we're reading this together for the very first time here on Storytime. Follow along. Chapter 9. As for Lawler, by early 1984, he was in the midst of his 36th reign as Southern Champion, and his legendary feud with Jimmy Hart's First Family dominated Memphis headlines. He battled the likes of Lord Humongous, Sabu the Wild Man, and future superstar Rick Rude. In one particular memorable storyline, Lawler was prompted to team with heel Joe LeDuc, who was also managed by Hart. And on March 12, 1984, they beat J.J. Dillon's Zambui Express for the AWA Southern Tag Team belts. Take out your notebooks and keep them out. On the whole, Jarrett's Memphis promotion was never dull, with spirited gimmicks, Man Mountain Link, Harley Davidson, The Executioner, just to name a few. Hot matches and solid talent. Jarrett also featured King Kong Bundy, Dutch Mantel, Austin Idol, and the Rock and Roll Express. The Fabulous Ones were popular as well, but they were on their way out, and they ventured to the AWA during the latter part of March. Remember that. Memphis and the AWA had maintained a good partnership for nearly 6 years, and Lawler was a principal challenger to AWA World Champion Nick Bockwinkel. The arrivals of the Fabulous Ones, Larry Zbyszko, and several others were part of Verne Gagne's effort to reignite his territory following a disastrous period of uncertainty. Say that 3 times fast. Since late 1983, with the exit of Hulk Hogan and Gene Okerlund, fans had let AWA officials know just how unhappy they were. Attendance dipped in most cities on the circuit. And on January 15, 1984, attendance dipped. The audience in the AWA's home base of St. Paul booed fan favorites unmercifully. Jesse Ventura, a strongman heel with a gift for gab, was roundly cheered, and Gagne reportedly asked Ventura to turn heel in the wake of Hogan's departure. Ventura rejected the idea. Looking to strengthen the promotion's alliances and bring in new faces, Gagne reached out to an old friend, Eddie Einhorn, a minority owner and president of the Chicago White Sox. Back in the 1970s, Einhorn headed an independent promotion known as the International Wrestling Association and ran opposition to the major organizations. His ideas were fundamentally strong, but he faced too many hurdles in bucking the establishment, and the IWA folded. Einhorn had been a TV executive prior to joining the Sox in 1981, and he and Gagne discussed the possibility of creating a nationally syndicated wrestling show. Their talks were at the preliminary level, but it was an exciting avenue that both men wanted to further pursue. Out in San Francisco, the AWA was losing ground and took a big loss on January 31st, 1984, when only 1,000 people attended a show at the Cow Palace. The WWF didn't seem to be doing much better. Vince McMahon lost his local TV on San Jose's Channel 36, but he refused to give up. Do you know the way to San Jose? Do you know the way to San Jose? No? Too much? Too early? Too soon? Was that Roberta Flack? Dionne Warwick? Somebody correct me in the chat, please. In late February or early March 1984, he traveled to San Francisco and met with James Gabbert, owner of Channel 20, KTZO, the station that broadcasts Gagne's weekly program, All Star Wrestling. McMahon offered to pay Gabbert $2,000 a week to feature WWF content in place of the AWA. In contrast, Gagne was providing his show for free. And though Gabbert had been cleaning up in commercial time, the WWF was proposing the weekly fee inflated to as much as $5,000 in some reports, $5,000 a week, plus all advertisement revenue. Gabbert agreed to the proposition, and since Gagne didn't have a contract, the WWF immediately took over the time slot on Saturday mornings, leaving the AWA high and dry. As if losing Hogan and Okerlund weren't bad enough, having his San Francisco television outlet ripped out from underneath him was a personal affront to Gagne. And since the AWA was already committed to And since the AWA was already committed to a Cow Palace show on March 24th, 1984, I'm as confused as a baby at Hooters, but I'm certainly as busier than a blow-up doll at a frat party. You understand what I'm saying, right? A little comic relief, a little stress relief. Again, I'm reading this for the very first time with you. How are my linguistic skills? Am I doing okay? So Gagne, March 24th, 1984, had a show set up at the Cow Palace and now had no TV to promote the event. The program was a predestined box office bomb. Gagne did manage to obtain a new station, Channel 26, about a week prior to the card, but the March 24th effort drew only 900 people. The WWF added a second TV outlet in Northern California, signing on with a Sacramento station, and entered that city for a live event on March 9th. On April 30th, 1984, McMahon debuted in Oakland, and the WWF drew an impressive over 10,000 spectators. Andre the Giant won an 18-man battle royal, which also included Hogan, Snuka, and Pat Patterson. Hogan was victorious as well, winning his singles bout against Tiger Chung Lee. The AWA survived the turbulence. Nick Bockwinkel stepped off the throne after a loss to Jumbo Tsuruta in Tokyo on February 23rd, 1984. And for a variety of reasons, Gates began to rebound in March. Chicago fans responded to the reunion of the Crusher and Dick the Bruiser tag team, and on March 4th, more than 18,000 people packed the Rosemont Horizon. The Freebirds, Stan Hansen, Jerry Lawler, and Montreal stars Dino Bravo and Rick Martel were part of the supporting cast. Amazingly, An even larger crowd was on hand in St. Paul on March 25th to see Crusher and Greg Gagne beat Jerry Blackwell and Sheikh Adnan El-KC. There is little doubt, however, that Verne Gagne was jolted by a tidbit of news. In the Minneapolis Tribune on April 15th, 1984, the blurb started that a new program entitled Superstars of Wrestling was going to appear on Channel 11 on Saturday evenings. With Superstars now on the TV lineup, it could only mean one thing. The WWF was on its way to the Twin Cities. From an outsider's point of view, McMahon's hostile actions toward the AWA appeared to be nothing short of a vendetta. But according to Gene Okerlund, who spoke with Minneapolis reporters in May, such a claim was far from the truth. Vince McMahon Jr. doesn't want to drive the AWA out of business, said Okerlund. Verne Gagne and Wally Carbo are still going to be able to exist. Needless to say, Gagne wasn't going to express any kind of gratitude for that statement. A world-class athlete in his younger days, he was no stranger to legitimate competition and was fully prepared to defend the Twin Cities and the rest of his territory from the WWF aggression. He didn't need anyone reaffirming the future of his company, and later told Minneapolis city businesses, "We were here before the WWF, and we'll be here long after they're gone." Let that marinate. McMahon's Minnesota incursion could have been much worse for Gagne. Apparently, when the WWF boss first got to the Twin Cities, he visited the office of Stu Schwartz, general manager of KMSP Channel 9, the home station for the AWA. Once there, he offered a six-figure upfront cash payment to replace the AWA with WWF programming. That son of a bitch, McMahon, right? Despicable human being. A deal of that magnitude would have made anyone stop in their tracks, but Schwartz ultimately declined the offer. Undisturbed, the ever-motivated McMahon took his business over to WTCN Channel 11, which had been the flagship station for the AWA between the 50s and the 70s, and an agreement was made. Superstars of Wrestling debuted on April 21st, 1984 at 6 p.m. With so many former AWA stars on the WWF payroll, everyone knew a Twin Cities invasion was inevitable. Besides Hogan and Okerlund, McMahon had Sergeant Slaughter, the Iron Sheik, Don Morocco, and Andre the Giant. All AWA vets, plus recent signees Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch, and David Schultz. Featuring local wrestling veterans on WWF TV and as live events was part of McMahon's wider strategy going into new territories, to connect to fans who didn't necessarily know the WWF product. He wanted to highlight familiar faces, wrestlers who'd worked that region prior for regional promoters. These recognizable grapplers would help induce people to watch McMahon's production and serve as somewhat of a bridge between the wrestling they were used to seeing and the new WWF style. For many pursuits of the AWA and NWA, the WWF was quite dissimilar in terms of presentation, booking, and genuine action. To garner the attention of the AWA and NWA loyalists, McMahon packed his cards with high-quality attractions and placed an emphasis on name value over in-ring skill. The WWF wasn't Gagne's only concern. Unfavorable publicity surrounded an unscheduled brawl involving two of his stars, Ken Patera and Mr. Saito. Instead of a headliner match at a local arena, their bout occurred at a Holiday Inn, and their opponents were 15 Waukesha, Wisconsin police officers. The April 6, 1984 incident saw both grapplers arrested after a lengthy battle. At least 4 officers were hospitalized, and one was forced to retire because of her injuries. Charged with multiple counts of battery, Patera and Saito were sentenced to 2 years in prison in terms of 2-year prison terms in 1985. Gagne dealt with the challenges as they appeared and kept the AWA chugging along. On May 13th, 1984, the day after the WWF debuted on WTCN, the World Heavyweight Championship changed hands at a show in St. Paul. Quebecer Rick Martel, a strong and athletic wrestling prodigy whom Gagne had taken under his wing, beat Jumbo Tsuruta to capture the belt. A decision by Gagne that attempted to dispel the conjecture that the AWA was nothing but an old man's promotion. McMahon's aggressive actions continued to motivate rivals. Jim Crockett was in the best position to counter the push of the WWF by advancing into McMahon's northeastern stronghold from his mid-Atlantic location. It also helped the Crockett's TV already reach the New York City area by way of WXTV Channel 41, a Spanish-language station. No me jode, marico, muévete, culo, pendejo. What I say, man? They down. It was nothing. Kayfabe, lighten up, man. Lighten up. Lighten up, man. What? What I say? I speak Spanish. Viewers responded to the immense talent in Crockett's territory, and the show grew a large following. Crockett solidified his partnership with Ole Anderson, and in early May 1984, an ambitious 17-city national tour was announced on Anderson's WTBS cable broadcast. Promoter Gary Juster appeared on camera in the segment and was acknowledged as the NWA's representative in Baltimore and at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. While that idea was in the works, few people knew that McMahon had already set the wheels in motion to secretly purchase Georgia Championship Wrestling. You guys remember Black Saturday? Go out and DuckDuckGo it. Don't use Google. Don't go Google it. DuckDuckGo. Black Saturday. I think for those of you that are my fans, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. Georgia Championship Wrestling out from under Anderson. That was McMahon's plan. With help from Jim Barnett, a minority owner and a mighty owner of the company, and the Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry, who... No, was that Jack and Jill? Jack and Jerry. McMahon obtained 51% stock and controlling interest in what was, in essence, the Georgia territory. Anderson temporarily blocked the purchase by obtaining a restraining order, and pending court action was the only thing holding McMahon back from officially taking over and replacing World Championship Wrestling with the WWF programming on WTBS. Say that fast. WCW, WWF, WTBS. In no way did Anderson want to sell, especially to McMahon, but because of the structure of the company's articles of incorporation, he was in an extremely vulnerable spot. By May 1984, news of McMahon's actions broke nationally, and Anderson remained hopeful that a Georgia court would side with him and declare the sale unlawful. Invading the Meadowlands was a big deal for the National Wrestling Alliance, which hadn't had much traction in that part of the country since Nature Boy Buddy Rogers ruled the roost in the early 60s. Even then, the NWA didn't hold much weight, but times had changed. And with WXTV and WTBS promoting their cause, Crockett and Anderson wanted to make the most of their opportunity. The proposed 17-city tour was scaled back to concentrate on an East Coast run from the Meadowlands beginning on May 29, 1984, and going through June 9th in Baltimore. I hope your notebooks are still out, so that you're better off when you walk out of here than when you came in here. The circuit included Roanoke, Atlanta, Raleigh, Norfolk, Richmond, and Greensboro, and saw the two promoters pull their resources at a crucial time to offset McMahon's first offensive in the Mid-Atlantic region. On May 31st, the WWF was going to debut in Richmond, followed by shows in Winston-Salem, Norfolk, and Hampton. Tensions were high. The talent grabs by McMahon hurt Crockett where it mattered most, and only worsened when Bob Orton Jr. left in March. A lot was riding on the NWA's Meadowlands show, and the spectacular was dubbed a Night of Champions. Headlined by world champion Ric Flair defending against Ricky Steamboat, who had returned to the ring in March after being offered a $10,000 check by Crockett. The program featured the Road Warriors, Stan Hansen, Dusty Rhodes, and Wahoo McDaniel. As anticipated, Flair and Steamboat put on a wrestling clinic, one of their absolute best, and the undercard thoroughly entertained the 12,000 in attendance. Among the other companies was Carlos Colon, a Puerto Rican superstar and holder of the World Wrestling Council Universal Championship, and Colon was a fantastic lure for Spanish viewers, WXTV, and he successfully defended his title against Tully Blanchard. You try this for the first time without proofreading, pre-reading, and doing this live. You try it. I like to challenge myself. 2 nights later, the WWF stormed into the Richmond Arena and featured 4 former Mid-Atlantic stars: Greg the Hammer Valentine, Sergeant Slaughter, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, and the Iron Sheik. Andre the Giant, who usually spearheaded the WWF forays into new territories, was in Japan at the time. Konnichiwa, bitches. Arigato from the Chaos-san. Prior to McMahon's invasion, sports writer Jerry Lindquist noted in the Richmond Times-Dispatch that there was to be an unwritten law in pro wrestling when it came to promoters and the various territories. You don't encroach on mine, and I won't encroach on yours. That law was broken by both the NWA and the WWF. But the WWF didn't see the results they wanted in Richmond. The WWF drew a gate of only $6,000 on May 31st, and a journalist called the effort ill-advised. In contrast, Crockett, the reporter claimed, had recently drawn an $82,000 gate at the Coliseum. With more recognizable performers, Crockett and Anderson held the advantage in the Mid-Atlantic states. But the turf war was just beginning. Combining talent to outgun outsiders was an old promotional tactic, one that the NWA had used throughout their history. By conjoining their rosters, promoters were giving fans a never-ending string of dream shows. And there was the upshot of heavy competition. Of all the battleground regions, there was no territory receiving a better blend of top wrestling talent on a monthly basis than St. Louis. Always known for its impressive lineups, St. Louis took on an even greater sense of importance after the WWF debut in December of 1983. And in the fight for fan support, both McMahon and the NWA's Bob Geigel were pulling out all the stops. On paper, Geigel's appeared to be the stronger of the two operations. In early 1984, he was receiving the cream of the crop from at least 5 territories in addition to the AWA to help pad his programs. His coalition of stars included Ric Flair, Harley Race, Dick the Bruiser, Dory Funk Jr., and AWA World Tag Team Champions Crusher Blackwell and Ken Patera. King Kong Bruiser Brody was a significant attraction for Geigel's outfit since he'd previously worked for Larry Matzek's Outlaw Group, and his replacement against NWA workers was noticeable for St. Louis fans. On January 6, 1984, Flair and Brody at the top of the bill drew a sold-out crowd at the Kiel Auditorium, Geigel's first in many months. The WWF was putting up a good showing as well, with 2 TV tapings at the Chase Park Hotel and a local arena debut at the Kiel on February 10th. Geigel tried to siphon off attendance by advertising his next big Kiel event, Kiel Auditorium fans, still a week away, on the same day as the WWF's show, but attendance was respectable for both promotions, and neither was anywhere near ready to fold up shop. The Von Erich brothers were longtime favorites in St. Louis and important allies for Geigel. Kevin, Kerry, and David each had runs with the Missouri State Championship and were popular box office attractions. And remember, fans, back in the territory days, if you were to hold the Missouri heavyweight title, that meant you were on to bigger and better things. State titles meant something, the Texas heavyweight title, so on and so forth. Trust me when I tell you, not so much in the WWF, but in the territories and in the NWA especially. You won in St. Louis. You won that Missouri State title. Chances are you were going on to at least get a shot and perhaps maybe win that NWA World Heavyweight title. In addition, Fritz Von Erich, a.k.a. Jack Adkisson, sent Chris Adams and Jimmy Garvin to St. Louis in 1984 with their respective valets, Sunshine and Precious. The Quarter was engaged in one of wrestling's most talked about feuds, and gates were up all over Texas and Oklahoma because of the heat brewing between them. The relationship between Adkisson and Geigel, as firm as it might have seemed, was being impacted by the influence of Vince McMahon. The latter made no attempt to hide the fact that he wanted to do business with the Von Erichs, and the possibility of working together seemed very real at the time. Between April 22nd and April 27th of 1984, McMahon's top star, Andre the Giant, made 3 appearances for Adkisson in one of his final tours for a non-WWF affiliate. I hope your notebooks are still out. I'm going to take attendance pretty soon. Bueller? Bueller? Anyone? Where was I? Adkisson also withheld his sons from the St. Louis Wrestling War from January 7th through the end of May, as it would have shown preference for one promotion over the other. But with the WWF gaining TV in Dallas and talk of a future invasion, Adkisson shut down any speculation and remained loyal to the NWA. Kerry Von Erich appeared for Geigel on June 1st and drew with Ric Flair. In other words, it was a draw. Hello, McFly. Is anybody home? Notably, Kerry and Flair had been part of an even bigger match on a much bigger stage just a few weeks before. On May 6th, Adkisson held a special memorial event for his late son, David Von Erich, and he held it at Texas Stadium. The Parade of Champions for the Yellow Rose of Texas show drew more than 32,000 fans, and Kerry went over Flair in the main event to capture the NWA World Heavyweight crown. It was a touching moment mixed with emotion and excitement, and finally, a Von Erich was a world title holder. Kerry's reign lasted 18 days. He lost a rematch to Flair in Japan on May 24th. The title switch ensured Flair would be back in the U.S. wearing the belt for the important Night of Champions program at the Meadowlands Arena on May 29th. McMahon had another big surprise for the wrestling world. On the same night as the NWA's Meadowlands debut, he presented the first episode of his new weekly series, Tuesday Night Titans, on the USA Network. Wrestling TNT. Kind of like what happens here on Chaos Corner. A talk show, reality. This isn't a fucking podcast. This is a show, an episodic YouTube adventure. You guys get that, right? One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans, as I said 30 minutes ago. In order to get respect, you have to start with respecting yourself. And once you do that, you open other people's minds to respecting you. Because there's three types of people in this world. Those who don't know what happened, those who wonder what happened, and people like the GOC and the ones that watch me that make things happen. McMahon had another big surprise, as we said. Tuesday Night Titans was the first of its kind, an entertainment-driven primetime interview and clip show featuring sit-down discussions with various stars, comedic segments, and lots of improvisation, which is what I do here. You see the connection, right? McMahon hosted the program alongside former wrestler Lord Alfred Hayes. The debut episode included a visit with Dr. D. David Schultz, at home with his family, a cooking segment with the Wild Samoans, and a lengthy appearance by Captain Lou Albano. By the end of the 2-hour program, it was clear that McMahon had created something both noteworthy and cringeworthy. Entertainment, nonetheless, and you see the different product between the NWA, the AWA, the territories, and what the WWF did here. I mean, this is history. Class is in session. The invasions continued, and the WWF targeted Jerry Jarrett's territory next. On June 24th, 1984, McMahon held a loaded show in Memphis, showcasing the World, Intercontinental, and Tag Team Champions, along with Andre the Giant, Big John Studd, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, and Mil Mascaras. Hulk Hogan's opponent in the main event was Moondog Rex, half of the Moondogs tag team, which had formerly held belts for Jarrett's promotion. Of all the regions McMahon had invaded, Memphis required a unique approach, and packed his cards with New York stars didn't win over patrons. New York City and Memphis, Tennessee, the two don't mix. Memphis fans responded to emotionally charged feuds, built with a steady hand, and acted out with precision. So the random booking of Hogan and Moondog Rex without any backstory or psychological investment was of no interest to fans. As a result, the WWF's draw in Memphis area was remarkably unimpressive. Nevertheless, Jarrett was ready to combat the WWF in Memphis. He went all out to prove his local supremacy, booking a special extravaganza billed as Star Wars 84 for the next evening at the Mid-South Coliseum. Wow! The venue was sold out, with 11,000 fans, dwarfing the WWF's attendance of 1,200 at the convention center. Now, Memphis sold out like that at the Coliseum every week back in the territory days in the 80s. Do your research. Research is your friend. Jarrett gave the fans 9 big matches, among which were Lawler and Austin Idol against the Road Warriors, and the Fabulous Ones against the Pretty Young Things. The event was Jarrett's biggest to date, and the following month Star Wars programs were staged in Nashville and Louisville as well, within days of the WWF's second local card. The Louisville show on July 22nd had 8 matches, with Lawler teaming with former pro footballer Ron Mikulajczyk against Rick Rude and Jim the Anvil Neidhart in the headline bout. Florida was another unique territory with its own traditions. Promoter Eddie Graham was an old school, and as old school as they come. And though wrestling fans loved his creative management style, the territory struggled in 1983, suffering from a lack of strong attractions. At one point, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter described the territory as crumbling, saying its rebound depended on a talent upgrade. Things did pick up before the end of the year and by early 1984. Graham was once again reaping hefty box office rewards. Youngsters Barry Windham, Mike Rotunda, and Billy Jack Haynes were fast becoming his bread and butter, and Dusty Rhodes continued to carry the territory as top fan favorite. On the heel side, Kevin Sullivan was doing a masterful job portraying a madman, supported by the likes of Jim Duggan, the One-Man Gang, Cowboy Ron Bass. Ric Flair also made a number of impactful appearances. In April 1984, Graham received Andre the Giant on loan from Titan Sports, as we are here in the shadows of Titan Towers. For a week's worth of appearances in the Sunshine State. Like Andre's visit to Jack Atkinson in Texas, this seemed like a gesture of goodwill to ensure the WWF in Florida remained on good terms. But literally the day before Andre began his tout, the WWF Superstars of Wrestling show debuted in South Florida on WCIX Channel 6. This move couldn't have been interpreted one of two ways. One, it was an added outlet and a cooperative enterprise benefiting both Graham and Vince. Or two, it was really step one in the WWF's expansion into the territory. And we know how that turned out. 2 months later, on June 16, 1984, that question was answered when Hulk Hogan and his compatriots marched into the Hollywood Sportatorium in the suburbs of Fort Lauderdale. Possibly due to the respect McMahon and his father before him had for Graham, the WWF stayed away from the territory's prime city of Tampa and instead focused on the southern part of the state. But Florida was now a battleground state. Speaking of battlegrounds, I hope everyone gets out to vote, because if you don't, shut the fuck up. I apologize. What I say, I don't mean to cuss. I don't mean to insult anybody. Lighten up, man. That's the problem with today's society. Here in 2024. What are we, like 2 days away? 3 days? Stay with like-minded people. Keep your head on a swivel. Keep your family and friends close to you. Use your own fucking discernment, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. And that's a shoot. Jesus Christ is coming back soon. Don't be caught dead without him. The McMahons also had a long association with Don Owen of Portland. They didn't stop the WWF from placing Superstars of Wrestling on Portland's KPTV Channel 12 on April 27, 1984. But their good relations might have slowed any attempt by the WWF to operate in Oregon for a little while at least. Now you see all the commonalities. Von Erichs and Jack Atkinson in Texas, Bob Geigel in St. Louis, the Crockett's, Mid-Atlantic, Eddie Graham, Florida, Don Owen, Portland, even with Vern Gagne, as I said. It all started off to seem nicey nice. Let's help each other out. But McMahon had a much bigger plan. You can see it here as it breaks down, as I read this to you here on Storytime. Again, I hope you stayed for the whole show. And I apologize for the linguistic skills. We're reading this together. Again, I'll say it again for the very first time. I haven't fucking read this. Back to the McMahons, Vince in particular, Jr. As far as Washington State was concerned, Owen's deep political connections did the rest of the work. Similar to the situation in Louisiana, Washington officials issued only a single license to promote wrestling, and Owen was locked in. Interestingly, Roddy Piper, who had made his bones working for Owen years earlier, didn't want to work shows in opposition to his former boss in the Pacific Northwest, though Owen reportedly gave Piper his blessing to do so. And I know that you didn't know that. McMahon invaded Minneapolis on June 17th, 1984, with Hogan, Paul Orndorff, Tito Santana, David Schultz, and the tag team champions of Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch at the Met Center before an estimated 11,000 people. Also a part of the show were Maurice Mad Dog Vachon and Jesse the Body Ventura, recent signees from the AWA. In July, McMahon added 2 other AWA cities to his circuit after placing Superstars of Wrestling. You see the commonality. That's the program that took over all over the territories, from coast to coast and post to post and border to border, from California to Florida, all the way up to the Dakotas. You see what's going on here. This really puts it all in perspective. You know the stories, you've seen the videos, now you get it here via the book, via audio and video. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. And that's why I present, when you come here, I present facts, history, not just thoughts and views and opinions and entertainment personified, letting you know who the fuck I am. And again, I apologize. They hit me with ad suitability all the time. YouTube's had their foot on my throat. And thank you to the over 36,000 of you that tuned in last week. Let's keep that ball rolling, man. I get off on a tangent, but I'll tie it up like a bow. My mind's like a lazy Susan. It will come back around. I could do this all day. In July, as I said, McMahon added 2 other AWA cities to his circuit after placing again the main show besides Tuesday Night Titans, which really screwed up Crockett in the Northeast area, according to the book here and according to history. If you go back and check it out, and I lived it. I was in my early 20s, mid 20s. I lived it. Superstars of Wrestling. And Salt Lake City, KSTU Channel 20, and Phoenix, KNXV Channel 15. The WWF followed up with shows in Salt Lake and Phoenix on July 28th and July 29th of 1984. Remember the time frame. And did fairly well in their debut presentations. The defections of Vachon, Ventura, and TV producer Al DeRusha, who joined the production team for Tuesday Night Titans, had drawn more blood from Verne Gagne. The war was costing him manpower and money and was highly personal. In his 20 years promoting in the Twin Cities, Gagne had dealt with competitors before. But the WWF was a different kind of animal. It had the finances, the connections, and the talent, including many former AWA stars, to succeed, like in all the rest of the other territories that we talked about before this. But AWA in particular, because back then it was one of the big 3. And if you throw in World Class, it was one of the big 4. Even though World Class was considered a territory, it was worldwide, especially in the early 80s. But a big question lingered in the minds of many anti-WWF promoters. Was McMahon breaking federal antitrust law by taking over talent and venues and TV stations from rival organizations? In the opinion of some, the WWF was fast becoming a monopoly. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. If McMahon was able to achieve half of what he was trying to accomplish, he would establish a wrestling syndicate that even the NWA in its heyday would have been proud to call its own. Fans, don't go anywhere. I'm coming back with more content, more story time, more flashback, more classic videos, more documentaries, Dinner for Two, Chaos Corner of the Show, in-ring action, talk shows, chaos clips, and yours truly. I hope you enjoyed this story. Again, much love and respect. Fantastic read. Go out and get it, and we can read along together. I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is. Don't you dare miss it.